Chloroplast. Chloroplast is the site of photosynthesis from start to completion. It can only be found in plant cells. Also, chloroplasts contain a green pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is essential for photosynthesis, where photosynthesis means it is the process by which plants make food. In most plants, photosynthesis occurs primarily in the leaves. A chloroplast contains a stroma or a fluid, and a grana, a stacks of thylakoids. So thylakoids contains chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is the green pigment that captures light for photosynthesis. So that is the example of a chloroplast where this is where the thylakoids or the main function of stroma cells is to help support organs and act as connective tissue for particular organs. So the stroma, which is also called as the fluid. Next is the pigments. So a photosynthetic pigment is a pigment that is present in chloroplast and captures the light energy necessary for photosynthesis. So chloroplast contain several pigments. First is the chlorophyll A, B, carotenoids, anthocyanin, xanthophyll, and lycopene. So in chlorophyll is the primary pigment used in photosynthesis. It reflects green light and absorbs red and blue light most strongly. Next is the carotenoids. Our plant pigments reflects with yellow, orange, and red color. And xanthophyls are reflected or it reflects yellow pigments. Anthocyanins reflects red and purples. And lycopenes, it also have lycopenes. Lycopenes it reflects the red color. And the betalains. Next is the general reactions. There are two reactions, which is the light reactions and the dark reaction. First is the light reaction, or the absorption of light energy, a reaction of photosynthesis that convert light energy into chemical energy. In this stage, colored pigments called chlorophyll absorb or trap light energy from the sun. This causes the flow of tiny electrical current, which converts the energy into high-energy chemicals, adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, or NADPH. Next is the dark reaction, a group of reactions that flow the light reactions in the photosynthesis and form glucose and the other reduced products from carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide uses the energy contained in ATP and NADPH to drive reactions that form organic compounds such as starch and sugars from the molecules of carbon dioxide and water. The organic compounds can subsequently be broken down during respiration to release energy to sustain life. Next is the conditions affecting rate of photosynthesis. So first is the internal. There are there are two there are two conditions affecting the rate of the photosynthesis. First is the internal factors, which there is a leaf structure, the product of photosynthesis and protoplasm. In external factors, the temperature, the light, carbon dioxide, and the water. In the light reactions, electron transport chains generate ATP, NADPH, and 0O2. Two connected photosynthesis collect protons of light and transfer the energy to chlorophyll electrons. The excited electrons are passed from the primary electron acceptor to electron transport chain. Their energy ends up in ATP and NADPH.
Good day everyone, I am Fatima de Castro and I will going to discuss about respiration. Respiration is the breakdown of food in living cells accompanied by the release of energy. It is accompanied by the uptake of oxygen, release carbon dioxide, and decrease in dry weight. It occurs continuously in living cells of plants, but the rate is extremely low in some structures such as dormant seeds. Respiration is a chain of chemical reactions that enables all living entities to synthesize energy required to sustain. It is a process by which plants break down the sugar in the cells to get energy to grow and repair. It is most rapid in meristematic regions such as cambium, root and stem tips, and in young leaves. It is more rapid at maturing fruits. Um, These are the chemical reaction for respiration. Glucose plus oxygen produce carbon dioxide plus water and plus energy or the ATP. Is this equation familiar? How does it relate to the equation for photosynthesis? Remember, during photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water are combined with light energy to create glucose and oxygen. While sa respiration, oxygen and glucose are combined to release the energy found in the bonds of the food or the glucose, and this creates carbon dioxide and water. There are two processes of respiration, the aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is a respiration of an organism occurring in the presence of free oxygen. Aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen. It occurs in the cytoplasm and mitochondria. It usually the glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide and water. It usually occurs in mammals, including humans. Anaerobic respiration is a respiration in which oxygen is not involved in the process. Anaerobic respiration occurs in roots and involved in the process. It occurs in roots and rhizomes in poorly aerated soils and tissue where entrance of oxygen is restricted by impermeable structures such as fruit, seed coats, and bud scales. Anaerobic respiration is undesirable because most of the energy released is not available for growth and because often are toxic to the tissues in which they are formed. Uh, Anaerobic respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. It occurs only in the cytoplasm. Um, the glucose is broken down into ethanol or the ethyl alcohol. It occurs in yeast, some types of bacteria, and also in some plants. Next is there are three stages in respiration: the glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport system. So, glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm in the presence or absence of oxygen. It breaks glucose into molecules of pyruvic acid. So, glycolysis occurs in cytoplasm. The energy uses 2 ATP to get started, and it produces 4 ATP. Its reactant is the glucose. The product produced is 2 pyruvic acid, 2 NADH, and 2 ATP. While the Krebs cycle or tricarboxylic acid cycle or TCA, it occurs in the mitochondrion, which completely breaks the remaining CC band of glucose, thereby releasing energy in the process. Um, Krebs cycle is the second stage of cellular respiration. During the Krebs cycle, energy stored in the pyruvate is transferred to NADH and FADH2, and some ATP is being produced. In the Krebs cycle, the Krebs cycle starts with pyruvic acid from the glycolysis. The next is electron transport system. It occurs in the mitochondrion and transforms energy released in the two preceding reactions into high-energy phosphate compound, the ATP. So, electron transport system. The electrons are passed from one molecule to another, and the energy released in this electron transfers is used to form an electrochemical gradient. So, it occurs in the cristae of the mitochondria, where a series of cytochromes or enzymes and coenzymes exist. So the breakdown of food in living cells accompanied by the release of energy. So next is essentially sugar is burned or oxidized down to carbon dioxide and water, releasing energy, ATP, and the process. So why do cells need ATP? All cellular work, all the activities of life requires energy, either from ATP or from related molecules. A lot of oxygen is required for this process. The sugar and the oxygen are delivered to your cells via your bloodstream. So, cells need energy in the form of ATP to do work. So if energy is not in the form of ATP, then it must be changed into ATP before a cell can use it. ATP is the form of energy that lets cells do what they want. So cells need ATP to grow, muscle cells need ATP to contract, and brain cells need ATP to think. So next is this process occurs partially in the cytoplasm and partially in the mitochondria. The mitochondria is another organelle in eukaryotic cells, like the chloroplast. The mitochondria has two lipid bilayers around it and its own genome, indicating that it may be the result of endosymbiosis long ago. In some ways, by the way, are what often called the powerhouse or energy factories of a cell because they are responsible for making adenosine triphosphate or ATP, the cell's main energy carrying molecule. So, in some ways, similar to the chloroplast, the mitochondria also has two main sites for the reaction: the matrix and the cristae. Matrix is a liquidy part of the mitochondrion, while the cristae is the folded membranes in the mitochondrion. Cristae is folds created by the inner membrane, while the matrix is in the inside of the mitochondria, created by the inner membrane. So that's all. Thank you.
Factors affecting respiration. Internal or three factors. Age and physiological condition of tissues, amount of oxidable substrate, and hydration. Environmental factors such as soil and temperature, light, gaseous composition of soil and air, soil moisture, injury and mechanical disturbances, and chemicals. Assimilation, conversion of food into new protoplasm and cell walls by existing protoplasm. integral part of growth and therefore is concentrated in the meristematic regions such as cambium, roots, and stem tips. Produces variety of substances such as alkaloids, anthocyanin, carotene, chlorophylls, other pigments, isoprene derivatives such as essential oils, oleoresins, rubber, sterols, tannin, and other substances. Accumulation, reproduction, growth, photoperiodism, and vernalization. Energy, capacity to do work, product of force and distance. In biology, work refers to displacement against any force, mechanical, electrical, osmotic, or even chemical potentials which living things encounter or generate. Living system, bioenergetics, follow the same physical law of thermodynamics. First law states that energy of the universe is constant. Example, total energy absorbed by the energy emitted from left plus energy stored in the left. Second law states that the natural tendency of the universe is towards increasing disorder.
Good day everyone, my name is Irene Olores and my topic for today is all about water relation processes. Water comprises over 90% of every organism and participates either directly or indirectly in all metabolic. So the unique properties of water is high specific heat, high heat of evaporation, and less dense. So water relation conveniently described by the water potential, which represents the energy of water per unit volume and has the same units as pressure. So we have four various processes. So first is we have diffusion. So the movements of ions, atoms, or molecules from an area of higher concentration to an area of low concentration. So the factors of diffusions are kinetic nature of matter and diffusion of gases. So another example of diffusion is uptake of water and nutrients from the soil by the roots and diffusion of carbon dioxide into the leaf of the plants during photosynthesis. Next is we have osmosis. So the movement but through a semi-permeable membrane from an area of higher concentration to an area of low concentration. So the factors are osmotic pressure and turgor pressure. So osmotic needed to prevent the passage of pure water in an aqueous solution through a semi-permeable membrane, thereby preventing an increase in the volume of the solution. So, and the turgor pressure is exerted against a cell wall as a result of the movements of water into the cell. So, as you can see to the picture, you can easily determine the difference between osmotic pressure and turgor pressure. And number 3 is plasmolysis. So shrinking or construction of cells due to loss of water and lowered osmotic pressure inside cells. So isotonic solution is solution having an osmotic pressure equal to that of a specified solution when passed to the semi-permeable membrane. And hypotonic solution is having an osmotic pressure lesser than that of a specified solution. And hypertonic solution having an osmotic pressure greater than that of a specified solution. So as you can see the picture below, so isotonic is the pressure is equal and the hypotonic is lesser than and hypertonic is greater than. And lastly is we have imbibition, uptake of water, special type of diffusion, since net movement of water is along a diffusion gradient. So factors affecting rate and extent of imbibition is temperature and osmotic potential. So in another word, imbibition is a special type of diffusion when water is absorbed by solids colloids that causing an enormous increase in volume.
Good day, everyone. I am Lesley Pagampang. So, we proceed to the next topic, which is all about macronutrients and micronutrients plants. So, what is macronutrients and micronutrients plants? Elements needed in relatively large amounts are termed macronutrients. So, those needed only in small or minute quantities are called micronutrients or trace elements. So, essential elements, it is needed for plant growth, or it is a chemical nutrient that is vital for the successful growth and development of an organism. And so for unessential elements, it is present but not needed. So here's the function of essential elements. First, constituents of plant tissue. Second, catalyst in various reactions. Third, osmotic regulations. Fourth, constituents of buffer system. Lastly, regulations of membrane permeability. So here's the example of minerals as constituents are. For the calcium, cell wall. Second, magnesium, chlorophyll molecule. Third, sulfur, certain protein. Phosphorus, phospholipids, and nucleoproteins. So for iron, copper, zinc, it is required in small quantities but essential because of prosthetic group or coenzymes of certain enzyme system. So for the manganese and magnesium, activators or inhibitors of enzyme. Next, boron, copper, and zinc. Lastly, toxic if present in large amount. So we proceed to the macronutrients, essential elements. So for nitrogen, the functions of nitrogen, it is the essential role of nitrogen as a constituent of amino acid, which are building blocks of protein, is well known. And for the deficiency of nitrogens, it is accompanied by the failure to synthesize normal amount of chlorophyll in chlorosis of the other leaves and the younger foliage in cases of extreme deficiency. Second, phosphorus. The functions of phosphorus is the importance of phosphorus in energy metabolism has been emphasized repeatedly in discussions of high energy phosphate being used to drive chemical reactions and the manner in which such organic phosphate bonds form. For the deficiency of phosphorus, plants are usually darker green than normal ones. Anthocyanin formation is enhanced and neurotic spots appear on leaves, fruits, and other structures. Third, potassium. And the functions of potassium, this element appears to have no structural role in plants but in activator for enzymes and has a role in stomatal movement. And for the deficiency of potassium, a mottled chlorosis, that is inhibition of chlorophyll synthesis of older leaves and spreading to younger ones, followed by necrosis of leaf margin and curling of leaves. Fourth, sulfur. The functions of sulfur is a constituent of 3 amino acids from which proteins and enzymes in general are synthesized. And for the deficiency of sulfur, results in symptoms generally similar to those of nitrogen deficiency, except the chlorosis appears first in the younger leaves. For the fifth, calcium. functions of calcium occurs in considerable quantities as a calcium oxalate crystal. It occurs in cell walls and apparently influences their elasticity, and it is involved in some manner in nitrogen. For the deficiency of calcium result in a serious injury to meristematic regions. Lastly, magnesium. And the functions of magnesium is an essential part of the chlorophyll molecule, and it is an activator of numerous enzymes, especially those involving phosphate transfers. Magnesium also plays a role in the maintaining the integrity of ribosomes. And for the deficiency of magnesium, as intervenal chlorosis of the older leaves, in the severe cases, the leaves may become whitish as a result of the loss of carotenoids as chlorophylls. So that's all.
Nitrogen cycle process. Ammonium and nitrate are predominate inorganic forms of nitrogen in soils. Ammonium exists in exchangeable and non-exchangeable forms. Nitrate and nitrous oxide are present in soil in lesser quantities. Plants normally use nitrogen in only the ammonium and nitrate forms. Nitrate is actually toxic to plants. The nitrogen cycle: reactions that various inorganic nitrogen compounds undergo in soil. So nitrogen cycle is a repeating cycle of processes during which nitrogen moves through both living and non-living things. The nitrogen cycle, as typically described, begins with nitrogen in its simplest stable form. The nitrogen and follows it through the processes of fixation, mineralization, nitrification, leaching, plant assimilation, ammonia volatilization, denitrification, and immobilization. So, the first one is the nitrogen fixation. So, in this process, fixation converts nitrogen in the atmosphere into forms that plants can absorb through their root system. So, next is mineralization. So, in this process, mineralization happens when microbes act on organic material such as animal manure or decomposing plant or animal material and begin to convert it to a form of nitrogen that can be used by the plant. So the third stage is the third process is the nitrification. Also occurs in the soil. It produced during mineralization. So this process is important to plants as it produces an extra stash of available nitrogen that can be absorbed by the plants through their root systems. The next is the leaching. Leaching is the loss of nitrate as water drains through the soil profile, moving out of the range of plant's rooting system. Next is the plant assimilation. Plant roots assimilate nitrogen mainly in the form of nitrates. Next is ammonia volatilization. It is formed in the soil by the decomposition of plants and animals and by the release of animal waste. Next is denitrification. This is the reduction of nitrates to gaseous nitrogen. The last is immobilization. It refers to the process in which nitrate and ammonium are taken up by soil organisms and therefore unavailable to crops. Micronutrients. So there are ESS elements like chlorine, copper, manganese, zinc, iron, boron, and molybdenum. So I'm going to discuss their functions and deficiencies. So the first one is the chlorine. Its function is essential for photosynthesis reaction on which water is split and oxygen released. Its deficiency is wilted of leaves without become chlorotic, turn in bronze color. Roots become stunted in length but thickened or club-shaped near the tips. Copper. Its function is this element is constituent of certain oxidative enzymes of plastocyanine. Its deficiency is the young leaves become dark green in color and are twisted, often accompanied by the necrotic spots. Next is the manganese. Its function is it required for the activity of many enzymes, photosynthesis, and also the activity by magnesium. And this is an important functions of plant. Its deficiency is it results in intervenial chlorosis and accompanied by numerous small necrotic lesions. Next is zinc. Is constituent of several dehydrogenase enzymes and is an activator of the enzymes, a growth regulator that is essential for the normal enlargement of cells. So its deficiency is lack of zinc result in a great reduction in the size of leaves and the length of internodes or leaf chlorosis. Next is the iron. Its function is essential for the synthesis of chlorophyll. Its deficiency results in chlorosis that is intervenial and sharply confined to the younger leaves. Next is the boron. Functions is implicated in carbohydrate cycle transport. Deficiency is death of the stem and root apical meristems. Young leaves may thicken, blacken, and become necrotic. The last one is the molybdenum. Uh, its function is it necessary for nitrogen metabolism, such reduction of nitrate to ammonium. And its deficiency is it brings us chlorosis of older leaves, marginal wilting, and necrosis. So that's all. Thank you.